it basically allows you within WP config. I check to see if there's a local config file, and if there is, I include it. And that local config file has all of my local database connection stuff, and it also automatically sets the URL to my local domain. So, and if it doesn't find that, it uses, this is the remote information. What I do within Git is I ignore the local config file, wherever it is. Really ignored. So there's a local config file that's being ignored by Git. Whoa. Who's that? That was crazy. Okay. I'm going to keep going. Dang, I didn't hear that. So I've got this local. Okay. Sorry, who is that? Who just joined? Whoever it is, it's you, because you're getting all sorts of feedback. Thank you. Thank you. Oh. So GITty-Up is a. Oh man, that's so annoying. Sorry. GITty-Up is a plugin that only runs on the server. It doesn't run locally. I've got it in the directory here, but it's not active on my local host. On my remote host, it is active. And this has to be, whatever your dev server has to be something that's accessible by GitHub, essentially. So when it runs its webhook for this URL, the specific GITty-Up URL, it needs to be accessible publicly. So just look at the GITty-Up plugin real quick. It's really simple. And all it does, it gives you this post hook URL, which you plug into, if you're looking at a repo on GitHub, or I guess if you use something else that uses post hooks, you can do that too. But if you're looking at your repo, you would go into the admin, and then service hooks, then post receive URL. So basically what this is whenever you commit something, it's going to query this this you on a single server, and as soon as we committed something, we wanted it to be live. So that's basically this instant version. But what happened is we moved to like InMotion. On InMotion, we were using like 4 servers, something like that. So we needed to, have each repo update automatically. So what it would do is you could use WP, or you could use the built-in cron of the system to query this paid, on a regular interval. Like here, it's using 1 minute. But then it would basically check to see if there's any updates that need to happen. If not, don't do anything. But if so, pull it all down. And then this Git repo configuration. This is actually the path on your server, your full path to the .git file or folder. So you need that in place. And what this allows you to do is like roll back essentially. So if you're developing, you commit something and like it breaks everything, you can immediately put in the last hash and it will go back just by updating that. So that's the basic configuration. I do instant if it's on one server, like I said, or cron for multiple servers. Any questions on that so far? Okay, good. So like I was saying, when I develop, I build whatever I'm working on locally to get started, and once I'm ready to kind of put it up, I'll go on the server and just clone the repo on the server where I'm looking to clone it. And then once it's in place, you do have to import the database and do the initial setup on the server. what I do is I build my local version, and then I upload. I do the checkout, and then I just get it exported to the database and put it up on the server. So it's not sort of an automatic thing. You have to set it up initially, but once you get it set up, it is an automatic thing.
Brandon, I got a question.
Yeah.
So does this only is it just PHP files, or will it hit other folders or file types?
So basically, GITty-Up is a couple different things. It basically uses whatever is stored in the repo will get pulled down. It does everything. So, but as far as what it's doing, it's basically using that, like I said, that post commit hook to send some JSON to the server and parse it and pull the last bit out. It does require that Git be running on the server, not like the server part of it, but at least the client part of Git be running so that it can check things out.
Okay, so the client part. Okay, I think I get what you're saying.
Right. So let's see. It basically, where is it? It uses this, I think, to basically fetch and then check out a specific hash.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay. So, and then it also, where it's supposed to keep a log. Actually, on the version that I use, we actually have a log that, because sometimes what will happen is the server, like somebody will make a change on the server or something in one of the files, and it will block the Git checkout. And so, if sometimes when that happens, that you have to actually force the checkout on through the command line. But if you're just working locally and committing, that never happens. It's usually somebody gets in the code and messes things up, and it screws everything up.
So multi issues.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and again, if you guys check this out, it's a public repo, and you make a change to it, it will as long as you're tracking whatever the latest branch is, it will work for anyone. But where sometimes it happens, there's an error is if you don't update your local copy before you push or something like that. There's a few cases where I've had problems with it, where it doesn't work like you'd expect it to work. But I think for us, we've just kind of when we work on a bit, commit it, and then it goes live, and then we work on something else, commit it, and it goes live. That sort of workflow works really well for this. Whereas you don't have to do FTP and that kind of stuff for for figuring out which files have changed and that kind of stuff.
Right. So as a side question, do you know if does Coda support Git?
Coda does. Well, I think there's a Git add-on for it, but I haven't had any success with it. I have heard that they're building that into a future version, but I haven't seen anything about it.
Yeah, okay. That was just interesting.
Yeah. So, let's see. Okay, so I've got this this public repo here that has all the basic WordPress stuff, basic WordPress check-in and stuff like that. So
right. To say about your database though, what do you normally do?
I use SQL Pro, and I've got access to both my remote and local one. So what I do is I'll export, just export everything, and then if I go out to the public site, there's obviously nothing already. Then I'll import it, and because I've been working locally, it has all my local domains. So there's two ways to kind of go about fixing that. You can put in the site URL, like I was mentioning in local config, you can define these in your config file when it's not using the local one, and that will change anything that's coming out of the database. But the problem is, like for content-related things, it doesn't edit those hard links that are put into post content.
Right.
So I have a script that I use, and basically I put this on the server. It's not good to like have publicly available, but if let me put it up. What should I do? It's like
there's actually rewrite rules and directives that you can put in Apache that will do it all on the fly. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I try to keep as much off of Apache's plate as possible.
Right.
In that regard, because there's definitely some people who, sometimes we have like hundreds of lines of rewrite rules that just slow it down so much. And this ends up. Sorry, go ahead.
Had I even known about the site URL that you were just showing us, I probably would have never wrote desktop server because I didn't even know about those features.
Oh, really? Yeah. That's how I've been working with WP Engine a lot, because they basically, and they set up WordPress for you initially, and they set it up with like whatever your username is .wpengine.com, and so whenever I check something in, like our config file, I always make sure I put in those two definitions, because it overwrites it with a constant rather than having to go through the database. But what this file does, this beta local thing that I have, I don't know if you guys have seen this script before. I pulled it from somewhere, but it does like a search and replace on the database with serialized data.
Yeah, that's exactly what I do in desktop server. There's a new version out that'll do, because sometimes the serializing is a chain.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like, I think that's the latest version. It looks familiar.
Yeah, so like it basically pulls all the WP config info. You say, okay, that's it, and then what you want to search for and what you want to replace with. So like I did like that, and that will change out all of the domains. For some plugins though, they store hard paths. So in other cases, like I have so like if I'm going, usually I use this locally, so I'll change this to my local map path. So those are like the two things that I really replace on a regular basis. And once you replace those two things, WordPress is essentially built to this domain.
Yeah, it's good to go. I call that process scrubbing. It's kind of it's painful, but it's exactly what I.
Okay.
Brandon?
So, yeah.
Can you share that script?
Oh yeah, for sure. It's actually
it's on GitHub. It's
yeah.
What's the name of it?
It's called
a good one.
Script Spectacula.
Add that link to the Facebook message blog there.
Let me.
I'd like to take a look at that.
That's Robert's version, and there's a kid that forked it on GitHub. He did a bang-up job. Let me see if I can find that one.
Yeah. I just use it for this, so that I think that's the one. I just keep copying it from site to site, but yeah, that would be cool if it's on GitHub. I'd take a look at that. So I've got my local one again. I'm not activating it here, but on the remote side, it's active and ready to go. I've set it up so that I have the webhook in GitHub here. So this is going to get called anytime I make a commit. So basically, I've got I created a child theme here that we can just play around with, whatever. But so again, this is all working locally here. In Tower, I've got the change here. As soon as I commit it, it's still here. It's still here locally. So just pushing it to the remote master. Alright, and depending on how big your repo is, I've noticed that sometimes this takes a second to get up there. But you know, it can take a little while if you've got a ton of files in there. But
I'll go ahead and post that up there for you guys.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I saw that on.
So just deleting the index page. Now I'm 11. So it's kind of a cool way. Like, it doesn't deal with content, but it does. You know, obviously it works with all the code in this entire folder, or in the entire repo.
Very cool.
Yeah, I mean it's been like for like, because I really like TextMate. I struggle with Coda still, just because I just haven't found a good flow with it. But I do like Coda because it had an FTP action.
Do you use a debugger, Brandon?
What's that?
Do you use a debugger?
What's debugging?
A debugger? You don't use a debugger?
I don't know.
Oh my god.
Brandon
Wow.
is hardcore. He uses echoes.
You know,
I have-
that's the thing. I thought about just writing a trace, because I can't believe that there's not even a native trace function to PHP. But
What I do is I have there's two files that are two functions that I always include. And if like I don't use echo, but I basically print R, like everything. But I hate, like, a long time ago, Jeff used to spell print R, like always, like, would mess it up. And so we always used to joke it was funny, like, and it became our sort of shortcut for that. So it just basically prints out, or you can use bar dump or whatever, either or two. But that's generally the extent of my debugging.
oh wow, yeah. I configured desktop server to work with NetBeans out of the box, but even still, like, just a typical thing like this is just use fundamental what you're in. I mean, whether you're Dreamweaver or whatever editor, because it's totally independent of what editor you're using. That's a pretty good idea.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely I haven't worked that into my workflow, but that sounds very handy. So there's a couple things, like I said, that sometimes get screwy with this. One of those being, like, for example, I made that. So if I commit that, I've got a lovely.
So is this thing replacing Google Hangout?
For right now, I guess. So sometimes what happens is it doesn't. I think what happens is because I've got 2 commits here locally, when I publish them, and I think this can be remedied in his code, but I think what happens is it only takes the first commit it comes to. So it should have replaced this file with my ints page. But if I look at actually what the server is on right now, it's going to be 1 commit behind, or however many commits. Like, it's basically here. It didn't, because the way GitHub sends its JSON, it sends each one of these independent. Like, it sends them all like as one JSON object. And so I think his is picking up just this first commit instead of whatever the latest commit is. So it has all the right information ahead of time. I don't have to do anything, but whatever reason see, so it was the previous commit. So there's situations that have been like that, and like if I actually change something on the server, versus changing it locally for whatever reason, it can, like, it appears like it works because here locally I'm not getting any feedback that commit was actually pushed to the server. I just know because the way the workflow works. But sometimes what happens is, there's a conflict and it can't automatically merge things. So we actually have on one of our sites, we have like a log that logs all the stuff, logs all the commit messages, and just in case there's any issues. This is kind of like an addition that I did to his code. But I don't think I pushed it back. I think it was just on a local version. So, like here, I've got an output of the update log. So it's telling me, like, this. I can go in here basically and check, okay, what was updated, what was modified, that kind of stuff. So that can be kind of handy sometimes.
God, I haven't even looked at the log before. That's cool.
It's actually really cool. Like here, I think because it's basically just like this is what's left over, because the git log is basically this text file on the server. So this is what it's telling you, that this is like the status. There's one file that's modified, and this is the path to it, which is essentially this, like, it's keep getting updated. But if there's a conflict, what you'll see is like the output in this output will be, these files, were clashing and can't automatically be checked out. So it's just a way for us to kind of debug stuff. But yeah, I mean, it sort of works for having I think TextMate with FTP sucks, because working with a transmit is great and everything, but if you're trying to work locally and sync things remotely, there's no way to keep track really of what files have changed, or on Coda. They just kind of you can publish things and it keeps track of whatever. But this has been one thing since we've added Git workflow. It's been a lot easier to use, even I think, than FTP, and quicker. So that's why
it has Git built into it, but I haven't bothered to mess. I know it does SVN as its forte, but I know it does Git now. I just don't mess around with it.
Yeah, I've seen plugins for both Git and SVN. That means I use SVN with it.
How do you like it? I don't even, I'm so bad. I don't even use a source code repository anymore. I just have a branch of files from hell.
I actually like it. I use it for all my own stuff. I have a free repository that I use and just save everything there. In case I have a hard disk crash, I've still got all of my source code, so it's really nice.
Do you use any of the MySQL tools that are built into it as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, I only use it as an editor and a debugger. I love it.
Yeah.
I've heard people starting to use NetBeans. I just can't get over the UI. I think like it's just so clunky looking to me.
It is. It's probably, they say it's lighter than Eclipse, but
it is much lighter than Eclipse.
Yeah, Eclipse takes an hour to start out.
Yeah, I got a friend of mine at a job once to convert over to NetBeans, and he was using Eclipse and swore by it. After a week of using NetBeans, he's saying, I'm never going back. That thing is so slow and clunky.
Yeah.
What's crazy is cross-platform. I mean, you go to the Linux version, and it's identical to the Mac version, which is identical to the Windows version.
Well, it's all in Java.
They all look ugly.
Yeah, they do. They all got that clunky Java UI. I know.
Yeah.
If you can get over that, it's pretty good. But I hear you. I do like the way that Coda looks. It's beautiful. But I kind of like Dreamweaver. I use Dreamweaver just for design because it's got the WebKit engine in it. But it's also costing me a mortgage on a house. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. See, the thing I don't like about Coda, because Jeff uses Coda a lot, and I haven't been able to use it because I just can't. Like, I got the WordPress like syntax or whatever for it, but like it doesn't autocomplete like TextMate does. Like, it's like doing.
NetBeans
and yeah, I think NetBeans John.
Complete. Is definitely the best. But does it do code folding? That's my biggest biff. If I don't have code folding, I just can't use it.
What version are you using? Because it does code folding for me.
Coda does?
No, I'm sorry.
No, code folding.
Oh yeah, no, NetBeans does great code folding.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this does it too. But only if you use special syntax, right, Dave?
Yeah, you can't use the end for, the colon and end for on a for loop, that kind of stuff. You have to use the braces, which I prefer anyway.
I was looking at this actually, Dave, after you talked to me about that, and there's a way they have a way to do it in PHP because they have like one of these I think is code folding. There was a way to add in there how to do with colons and divs and whatever. just to make you mad.
Well, I'd never use it anyway, so.
We're all very particular about our.
We are.
Yeah, no, it doesn't matter to me, but yeah. So that's kind of the workflow, anyways, for using GITty-Up with TextMate. It's like it takes a minute to set up. Obviously, that's why I was late starting this. But once you're in an environment, and this actually, we're using this here. This is actually their production site. So we're using things to develop locally, which push immediately to the developments or to the public site. Now, one thing you could do too is within here you could do you could set these up to have this pushes to the dev site, then you test it there, and then push it somewhere else or whatever. But we just use it straight to the lab site.
Interesting. Cut out the middleman.
Yeah.
Hey,
it's like once. It's like. Is he? I don't think so. It's funny because he was the one who asked the question.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I was like.
Yeah. But yeah. So. It's
iPad 3 to go pick up, dudes.
You had what?
I ordered an iPad 3 and I missed the FedEx shipment.
Oh.
I'm gonna go try to fix that out. But thanks for sharing that, man. And that search and replace is awesome. I use it to do like everything.
Yeah, you said you posted to the Facebook group.
Facebook group. It's the latest version. Something forked it. He fixed a couple of things where I was having problems because in desktop server I actually scrub everything because I want to try to get compatibility with unknown third-party plugins. Just otherwise I'm doing a support of the yin yang. So his version does go through chain serialization, where sometimes people double serialize, and it looks like it takes care of that. So yeah, you can check that out.
Actually, we can do this separately, but I've been having issues with W3 Total Cache and serialization of objects specifically. Like W3 Total Cache is working with serialization of arrays, but for some reason with objects, it hates it. So I'm wondering if you have any input on that.
Is it because of other data types other than?
Yeah, it's from basically like a custom object rather than a standard class object.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about because I ended up swapping out W3 Total Cache for another cheesy caching system. I shouldn't say cheesy, it's just the one that guys from S2 members made because I was having trouble with that. And I have been elated. So, to answer your question, in order to fix the problem, I ended up avoiding it. Which is not a solution because, obviously W3 Total Cache is that's the gold standard. Seems like everybody's using that.
Well, you could probably deserialize most objects okay. Problem with serializing objects that you run into is that you can only serialize the public properties. So if an instance of an object is relying on some private properties being initialized, those won't get unserialized, and that might be what's causing your problem.
I'm wondering if it's like unserializing it but not knowing how to deal with it because that class hasn't been instantiated or included yet.
Well, when it deserializes, it creates an object of that instance and just sets all those public properties to the values that it had serialized. The class, during its own initialization, deals with private properties. It can't touch those. It doesn't know about them. So that would depend on the class implementation itself.
Okay. Yeah, the guy who wrote GITty-Up Blair he was having that issue with his affiliate software, Affiliate Royale, where he had to change some things he had to change everything to arrays because the objects were they were basically, if you had W3 Total Cache running, it was not working.
I'm surprised that WordPress doesn't actually just use JSON for